This lesson is a quick overview of all the external buttons and ports. The most important button on the camera is the shutter button. This will usually work as a two-phase button, meaning that it has two positions. The first is a halfway depression, which will focus the camera, and the second is a full depression, which will actually take the picture. It is very important to feel the difference between the two. When you first push it down, there's a very soft click. It's almost like you're just breaking through the stress point. That is the first position. We need to train our finger to be able to hold it down here to focus, and when we want to take the picture, we push it down all the way. I'll be covering it in much more detail later on in the video. The second most important dial is a small wheel next to the shutter button. It's called the front dial by Panasonic, but I like to refer to it as your primary selector. There is a nearly identical functioning wheel next to where your right thumb would rest, which is the back dial. Both the front dial and the back dial will allow you to change your primary camera exposure settings depending on what mode you're in. In the manual mode, the front dial will change your aperture and your back dial will change your shutter speed. In all other modes, these dials behave the same. The third most important button is on the back of the camera. It's a large wheel, which I call the control dial, and you can't miss it. If you look closely, there's actually three ways to change settings here. We have a rotating wheel around the outside, a directional pad on the inside, and a set button in the middle, which also acts as an access to the deep menu of the camera. This is also going to help us to navigate and select things through menus and things of that nature. The fourth most important control is the mode dial, which will allow you to select different shooting modes. In the center of this dial, there is a locking button, which when pressed will not allow us to accidentally rotate the dial. When we press it again, it will allow us to change to the different modes. We also have the very important power switch. You are going to be using these buttons and wheels more than anything. I can promise you that. Let's take a look at the rest of the other buttons on the camera. Just behind the front dial, we have three small buttons. WB stands for white balance. ISO stands for ISO control. And this last one is your exposure compensation, which changes your brightness. And this happens differently depending on what mode you're in, and I'll be covering it in greater detail in another video. If you want to change any of these settings, you would first press the respective button, and then looking at your monitor, you would use your front or back dial to change the setting. It's that simple. The Fn1 button by default will allow us to change both our white balance by rotating the front control dial or our ISO by rotating our back control dial, but it can be customized for many different uses. Below it, we have our video record button. Anytime you want to start recording, you're going to have to press this. On the far side of the camera, we have our lens release, which we push every time we take a lens off. Above it, we have our flash sync cord connector, which is used for wiring strobes. This little button next to the lens where our right ring finger would rest is the depth of field preview button. It can also be customized in a number of ways. On the top left of the camera, we have our release modes, and this is what the camera does after we push the shutter button down all the way, whether it's a single shot or a rapid burst or maybe even a timer. On the back of the camera, we have the play button, which will allow you to review your images. Fn5 stands for function 5, and it's going to allow us to control how our eyepiece monitor and our back LCD monitor work. The default is that the back LCD monitor is going to be on until we raise the camera to our eye to look through the viewfinder. There's a little sensor just below the eye cup, which senses when we're close to it. It cuts the power off to the main LCD monitor and turns the monitor on in the viewfinder. Now, this can be kind of annoying, and if you want to just turn one or the other on, you would press the Fn5 button. I like to use the back monitor probably about 95% of the time, and this is what I do, is I just leave that on. The eye monitor is great, but it's typically used for certain shooting situations where you may be in a dark room, or maybe the monitor is distracting. things of that nature where you have to put the camera to your face. And even as a long-time shooter, I'm finding I still use the back monitor more and more. On the top right of the eye monitor is a diopter adjustment wheel. It's very easy to miss, and this allows you to control the focus in the viewfinder. Immediately to the right of the eye monitor, we have the focus mode selector. And I'll be talking about this in great detail in different lessons. On the inside of this dial, we have the autofocus and the auto exposure lock buttons. This is the joystick. It moves up, down, left, right, and is useful for selecting menu items as well as changing our focusing squares. Pushing it into the camera body is the same as the set button. Fn2 covers the quick menu, or the menu that you are going to see while you are shooting. It allows us to change some shooting options when using the touch monitor. Fn3 is going to allow us to change our focusing squares. Lots of information to cover about this in a separate lesson. The display button toggles different sets of information on our main LCD monitor depending on what mode we are in. Fn4, or function 4, is your delete button. Keep in mind that the main monitor is touch sensitive, and when active you can change a lot of different settings directly on it. On the side, under where our left hand would rest, we have a number of different gaskets that cover some very important ports. On the top, we have our microphone input, so we can feed different microphones into the camera to get better audio quality, and you are going to need some sort of extra microphone because the one that is built into the camera, it picks up a lot of different noises, motors turning, background noise. It's not the best microphone in the world, and I would definitely recommend feeding an external microphone in. The headphone jack allows us to listen to the audio as it's being recorded. The audio video out and the HDMI cables will allow us to see our images and movies on a larger monitor or TV. On the far right of the camera, we have our remote port, and this is useful to plug in a wired remote, which is best when shooting long exposures when we don't want to touch the camera. And there's other ways we can activate the camera through Wi-Fi, and we'll be talking about that later. Under the cover on the right side of the camera, we have our two SD card slots. Underneath the grip, we have the battery port, and this rubber gasket here allows us to connect an additional grip. So that's an overview of the camera. We have covered all the buttons, their names, and a quick definition of what they do. If you forget which button does what, just come on back and we'll go over it again. For the rest of the video, we're going to be covering each of these buttons in greater detail, as well as showing you how to use each. If you found this video helpful, you might be interested in my Panasonic GH5 crash course. I'll teach you the basics and show you how to shoot great stills and video in no time. You can order it from the following link.